So, our group had climate change and infectious disease. I'm going to be talking about infectious agents, the main three, and their life cycles. So, bacteria has four phases: lag, log, stationary, and death. And throughout these phases, they basically adjust to the environment, multiply and reproduce, and then eventually lose their ability to reproduce. And viruses, they go through three main phases: entry, biosynthesis, and lysis. In the entry phase, they attach to a host. In the biosynthesis phase, they reproduce and replicate and make new proteins. And then in the lysis phase, that's when these newly produced cells are going out into the environment. Parasites have two types of reproduction: indirect and direct. And in both of these, they basically survive off of a host. So predictions are that there will be an increase in water and foodborne diseases. There will also be an increase in mosquito-borne infectious diseases and an overall increased risk of infectious disease. This is due to the contamination of the environment due to climate change, the deterioration of the environment, and pollution overall, which is also making us more susceptible to respiratory infectious diseases. So the physiology of host pathogen interactions. Basically, the host pathogen relationship is how the infectious agents sustain themselves off of host organisms. So this can be molecular, cellular, or organism. It can be on any of those levels. So some of the effects on the pathogens as the temperature increases are there will be an increase in the contamination in food and water by bacteria, and also an expansion of infected areas.
So, the metabolical theory of ecology is just a prediction of how host pathogens interact with the climate change. They use three main things, which is metabolism, temperature, and body size. And in the article, we saw that as temperature increased, so did the reproduction rate, and most of them reached maximum pathology. An example of community ecology would be in the Caribbean. As temperatures increased, new pathogens were introduced, which ended up affecting the coral and had other repercussions. Keystones are very essential to our ecosystem, and they help other organisms perform their normal functions. And once they're infected, like for example in the Caribbean, the urchins were infected and weren't able to perform their normal graze, so the coral ended up overgrowing with algae, which ended up leading to a disease outbreak.
To continue this section, the article went to discuss the impact of climate change on microbial communities. In specific, it discussed how some organisms can go from a mutualistic relationship, where both parties live with one another and gain benefits without harm, to a pathogenic relationship, where at least one of the species will be harmed. It also discussed the impact on biodiversity. It was concluded that with an increase in climate change, there will be a decrease in parasites, ultimately leading to a rise in the transmission of pathogens and disease. This next section of the article looks at how phenology can be impacted. Phenology is the study of how climate change or other seasonal factors can influence the biological cycle of plant and animal species. As climates increase, less species are migrating, which has led to an increase in parasites. Climate change has also affected the developmental stages of a species, meaning a species could be born sooner or later than normal, causing a shift in their natural cycle. Due to this, pathogens have the possibility of living longer. An example is seen with the caribou and nematode hypobiosis. As the life cycle of the nematode changed, disease and infection rates increased as a result.
Climate change has also had a huge impact on diseases. Diarrheal diseases, cholera, and coastal vibrio have been scientifically linked to traits of global warming, and some diseases are having a greater impact on humans due to the rising temperature. It's vital to combat the worsening effects of disease with forecasting and modeling efforts, which have proven to help disease management and climate resistance in the agricultural and natural worlds.
In the conclusion of the article, it explored the outlook and the future challenges. The mechanistic models need to be focused on climate drivers of temperature variables, precipitation, extreme events, and relative humidity. These models should be ones that come from experiments that test predictions under realistic conditions. The ability to predict the change in climate linked to disease is a hardship. Diseases that are located in one location allow for signals connected to climate change to be easily known, but mobile diseases make these signals harder to trace. The challenge is to figure out the link between climate disease interactions and climate change effects. This could include how the loss of farmland has been linked to rises in infectious diseases through human populations. There should be an emphasis on knowing places in the world where this could happen.